Ethan's boots crunched against the pale, cracked surface of the desert moon. Not Earth, not even a planet bustling with life. This was the outer moon of Lyra 9, a barren wasteland where the sun hung weak and distant, and the horizon stretched into endless nothingness. The cold here wasn't just physical, it seeped into the soul. Every night, it clawed at his bones, reminding him that he was alone. Not just alone in a place, but alone in existence itself. He'd been wandering for weeks, maybe months. Time had lost meaning. He scavenged what he could from abandoned mining outposts, old cargo pods, and the skeletal remains of old settlements that the corporations had long since abandoned. Water was precious, heat even more so. Food was mostly synthetic rations left behind by workers who had long forgotten this desolate place. Ethan's clothes hung in tatters. His jacket, once durable and insulated, now offered little protection from the icy nights. His hair had grown unruly, his beard patchy. Yet in his eyes burned something that the desert could not snuff out, a stubborn ember of survival. He had heard whispers. Rumors circulating on static-laden broadcast channels, on dying signals bouncing between satellites, stories of a cave, hidden somewhere deep in the desert, untouched for 100 years. Some said it was cursed, others called it a treasure trove abandoned by an ancient explorer. No one knew for sure. All agreed on one thing, nobody returned unchanged. Ethan had no choice but to follow the rumor. Hunger had taught him desperation, and desperation had taught him courage, or madness, he couldn't decide which. He moved from ridge to ridge, scanning the horizon, listening to the wind moan over the jagged dunes. It was silent in the open, but the desert had a voice if you listened closely, a whisper of secrets buried beneath centuries of dust. On the fourth night, he saw it. A slit in the rock face, half hidden by a mound of sand that shimmered silver under the pale moonlight. At first, it seemed unremarkable. Just another crack in the lifeless cliffs. But something about it drew him closer. There was a weight to the shadows, a presence that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. Ethan approached cautiously. He felt the temperature drop sharply as he neared the opening, as if the cave itself exhaled a breath of cold that reached into his chest. He crouched and peered inside. The darkness seemed bottomless, yet faintly, he thought he heard a hum, a vibration that made his teeth tingle. He hesitated. Weeks of survival had taught him caution. He knew the desert had a way of killing the careless, of swallowing men whole and leaving nothing behind. But he also knew that a man who waited for rescue in this place rarely survived. Hunger made him bold, isolation made him reckless. And the cave seemed to call him. His mind raced. Could it be treasure? A safe place? Or just the lair of some long-dead miner, a trap set by time itself? He had no proof, only instinct. And instincts, in the desert, were often the difference between life and death. Ethan's hand hovered over the edge of the entrance. His heart pounded, not from fear, but anticipation. He imagined what could be inside, relics of a forgotten civilization, old supplies, even technology that had been lost to time. Anything. A chance to escape the endless struggle of survival, if only for a moment. The desert wind shifted, carrying with it a faint, almost imperceptible scent of something old, metallic, yet strangely alive. The hum grew louder, echoing through the cave like a heartbeat. Ethan swallowed hard. For a long moment, he considered turning back. Any sane man would have. But hunger, cold, and desperation had stripped him of sanity long ago. He stepped forward. 1 foot. Then another. The sand crunched beneath his boots as he entered the cave, leaving the pale moonlight behind. The darkness enveloped him, yet he felt no fear, only an electric sense that he had crossed into a place that had been waiting for him. Waiting for someone like him. As he moved deeper, the hum became a rhythm, a pulse in tune with his own heartbeat. Ethan had no idea what lay ahead, no clue that the cave's secret had remained untouched for a century, preserved as if anticipating this exact moment. He was alone, yet not alone. Something had waited. Something had planned. And now, it was awake. Ethan paused, the darkness pressing in from all sides. He could feel the weight of time in this cave, heavy and tangible, as though centuries of history were coiled in the shadows, waiting for his eyes to uncover them. Whatever lay ahead, it had been waiting for him, and only him, to find it. Ethan had never owned anything in his life. Not a bed, not a meal, not a single item that wasn't scavenged from the detritus of forgotten worlds. Yet here he was, standing at the mouth of the cave, the wind whipping around him, staring at a sign that seemed impossibly out of place. It was a metal plate, half buried in sand, etched with symbols he didn't recognize. Its edges were worn and rusted, yet the letters glimmered faintly under the pale light of Lyra9's sun. It read simply, "This cave is for sale. Inquire within." Ethan blinked. For a second, he thought he imagined it. No one in their right mind would sell a cave on this forsaken moon. And yet, here it was. The idea seemed ludicrous, but so did much of his life lately. The cave's interior was colder than the air outside. Shadows clung to the walls like sentient things, shifting when he wasn't looking directly at them. The hum he had noticed before grew stronger, vibrating faintly in his bones, as though the cave itself was aware of his presence. A small device lay near the entrance, an old compad, cracked and dusty, yet miraculously functional. Ethan hesitated, then powered it on. Static filled the small chamber, making him flinch. Then a voice came through, soft but sharp, echoing in the confined space. "You found the cave. Good. Are you prepared to claim it?" Ethan's pulse quickened. Claim it? How? He had nothing to trade. Nothing at all. His life was a string of empty pockets and empty stomachs. But desperation makes a man bold, or reckless. I have nothing," he whispered to the pad. "Nothing is enough," the voice replied. "The cave chooses. Place your offering on the altar at the center. If it deems you worthy, it will be yours." Ethan scanned the cave. Center? He moved cautiously along the narrow passage, the hum growing louder with each step. Eventually, he came to a small chamber, faintly illuminated by glowing crystals embedded in the walls. At the center lay a stone pedestal, smooth and worn, as if centuries of hands had rested there before him. He looked down at his meager possessions. His only treasure was a rusted multitool, a handful of ration cubes, and a small pouch of moon dust he had collected to trade in settlements for water. He dropped them onto the pedestal. The cave seemed to inhale, a sudden gust of cold sweeping through the chamber. The hum intensified, pulsing in a rhythm that matched his heartbeat. Then, silence. A click echoed through the chamber, soft but deliberate. A hidden panel in the wall slid open, revealing a small compartment with a metallic token inside. It gleamed like liquid silver. Ethan picked it up, the metal surprisingly warm against his skin. He had no idea what it was, but instinct told him it was the key. "The cave is yours," the voice said again, and this time, there was a hint of something almost human in it, a note of acknowledgement. "Use it wisely." Ethan's mind raced. The token felt heavy, more than its weight in metal. It carried meaning, history, purpose. The cave, he realized, wasn't just a shelter. It was a gateway, a guardian of something older than he could imagine. And somehow, in the madness of a lonely, wandering life, he had been chosen. That night, he slept inside the cave for the first time, curled against the cold stone floor. Outside, the moon winds howled and the sands shifted, but inside, there was a strange sense of safety, as if the cave itself had wrapped around him. Yet sleep was uneasy. Every dream was filled with flickers of movement in the shadows, whispers he couldn't understand, and the faint glow of something calling from deeper within. By morning, Ethan realized that claiming the cave was only the beginning. The real mystery was waiting, beneath layers of rock, time, and silence. The cave had stood untouched for a century, and now, finally, someone had arrived. Someone the cave had been waiting for. He looked at the token again, turning it over in his hands. It was cold, yes, but it felt alive, as though it had a heartbeat of its own. And then he saw the faint etching along its edge, symbols that matched those on the walls of the deeper tunnel. A shiver ran down his spine. He knew instinctively that whatever lay ahead, it had been waiting for him specifically. For a century. And he had no idea whether it would save him, or destroy him. Ethan took a deep breath, tucking the token into his jacket. He had survived the desert. He had claimed the cave. Now, he would step deeper into its secrets, unaware that the first choice was always the easiest one, and the hardest decisions were still to come. The cave seemed to breathe around him. Every step Ethan took echoed like a heartbeat, deep and hollow, bouncing off walls that were older than anyone alive. The token he had claimed the night before burned faintly in his jacket pocket, a warm pulse against his chest, urging him forward. He didn't know why, but instinct told him the cave wasn't done with him yet. Deeper tunnels stretched out like veins, twisting in ways that defied logic. Some passages ended abruptly in walls of jagged stone, while others sloped downward into darkness so thick it felt like swallowing shadows. Ethan pressed on, holding his breath as if the air itself might betray him. The faint hum from before had returned, now stronger, vibrating through the ground, through the walls, through his very bones. And then he saw it, a section of wall that didn't belong. Unlike the rough, fractured stone around it, This part was unnaturally smooth, almost polished, with faint carvings etched in patterns that seemed to shift when he looked away. Symbols that matched the ones on the token glimmered faintly under the glow of the luminescent crystals embedded in the ceiling. Ethan knelt to examine them. Each symbol seemed alive, shifting subtly as if aware of his touch. He ran a trembling finger along one line, and a soft click resounded from the wall itself. A shiver ran down his spine. He had heard tales, old legends whispered in broadcasts long dead, of hidden doors, doors that only opened for the right person. Could this be one of them? He pressed the token into a carved indentation at the center of the panel. The metal slid perfectly into the slot, as though it had been waiting for his hand. A low rumble filled the tunnel. Dust and small stones rained down from the ceiling as a section of the wall began to move, sliding inward to reveal a narrow doorway. The air inside the passage beyond was different. Warmer, yet tinged with something faintly metallic. Ethan stepped forward cautiously, peering into the dim interior. The tunnel was lined with intricate carvings, depicting scenes that seemed impossible, ships sailing across stars, strange creatures walking beside humans, and a glowing artifact at the center of a ceremonial hall. The imagery stirred something deep in Ethan's memory, though he couldn't place why. Every instinct in his body screamed caution. He was alone. He was unarmed. And yet, he felt an irresistible pull, a certainty that he had been meant to see this. The hum became a steady pulse, almost like a heartbeat, synchronizing with his own. With each step, the air thickened, carrying whispers he couldn't understand. The shadows themselves seemed to shift toward him, forming shapes that disappeared when he blinked. It was as if the cave was alive, watching him, testing him. Finally, he reached the end of the narrow corridor. A door, massive, carved from a single block of dark stone, stood before him. Its surface was covered in the same symbols, more intricate than anything he had seen before. At its center was a recessed slot that perfectly fit the token. He hesitated, hand hovering over the slot. Every story he had heard about ancient discoveries warned of traps, guardians, curses. One wrong move and he could lose more than life, he could erase himself from the universe entirely. His heart hammered. Sweat stung his eyes, mixing with the dust on his face. And yet, he knew he could not turn back. The desert had taken everything else from him, but this, the cave, offered something greater. Knowledge, power, a chance at survival, or perhaps something beyond human understanding. With a deep breath, he inserted the token into the slot. The door shuddered, and the hum became deafening. A line of light traced the edges of the carvings, forming patterns that raced across the stone like liquid fire. Then, with a deep, resonant groan, the door slowly began to open. Beyond it lay a chamber bathed in pale golden light. Ethan could see shapes moving just beyond his vision, structures that defied earthly geometry, and in the center, a pedestal holding an object that seemed to pulse with energy. Whatever it was, it had been preserved perfectly, untouched for a century, waiting for him to arrive. Ethan stepped forward, awestruck, every nerve alive with anticipation and fear. He had found the hidden heart of the cave, the secret that had been waiting 100 years for someone brave, or desperate, enough to discover it. And somewhere, deep in the chamber, the hum shifted into a whisper, almost like a voice. "Welcome, Seeker, you are finally here." Ethan froze. He wasn't alone. He had expected emptiness, silence. Yet whatever had awaited him had been patient for a century, and now, it was awake. The chamber seemed to breathe around Ethan, pulsing with light and energy that made his skin tingle. He stepped cautiously, boots crunching softly on the crystalline floor. The pedestal at the center glowed with an unnatural golden radiance, and atop it rested an object that seemed both impossibly ancient and impossibly alive. It was small enough to hold in one hand, yet it radiated power. Its surface shimmered like liquid metal, constantly shifting, reflecting fragments of the cave and Ethan's own face. Symbols danced across it in patterns that matched the token he carried, and the hum that had guided him through the tunnels now thrummed with intensity, vibrating through his chest. Ethan reached out, trembling, and the moment his fingers brushed the object, the chamber reacted. Light rippled across the walls, illuminating carvings that had been invisible before. Scenes of ancient civilizations, long extinct, played out like moving tapestries, cities floating in the sky, machines that defied gravity, beings whose shapes he could barely comprehend. He felt the weight of 100 years pressing against him, a message waiting patiently for someone who could understand. The object pulsed once, twice, and then, as if reading his thoughts, it opened. Not physically, but in a way that transcended space and time. Images and sensations flooded Ethan's mind. Knowledge he had never known surged through him, maps of forgotten worlds, the architecture of civilizations lost to time, the secrets of energy that could reshape planets. It was more than discovery, it was revelation. Ethan staggered back, panting. The cave hummed louder, and he realized it was almost speaking to him, not in words, but in understanding. The object had been waiting for a mind capable of receiving its knowledge. A century had passed, and now it had found him. But all quickly gave way to fear. The object pulsed again, and the temperature in the chamber dropped. Shadows gathered at the edges, swirling like living smoke. Ethan understood instinctively, the cave was testing him. It wanted to see if he was worthy, not just clever or desperate, but careful, patient, and strong. One wrong move, and the knowledge could overwhelm him, destroy him, or worse, use him for its own purposes. Ethan's gaze fell on a faint inscription along the pedestal. Symbols, carved in delicate precision, spelled out a warning: to take is to risk, to leave is to survive. He realized the truth, this was no ordinary discovery. Whoever controlled it could change the course of history, wield technology and knowledge that should never exist in human hands. Yet leaving it behind might mean returning to the emptiness he had escaped, the cold loneliness of the desert moon. He clenched the token in his hand, feeling its warmth seep into him. It was not just a key, it was a guide, a tether to the cave's intent. Slowly, carefully, he reached again for the object. The moment his fingers made contact, a rush of images overtook him. Wars fought over this knowledge, civilizations rising and falling, secrets lost and hidden, waiting for the right moment, the right person. Ethan felt dizzy, overwhelmed, but a strange calm followed. He realized the cave had chosen him for a reason. He held the object, its light bathing him in golden brilliance, and suddenly understood that this was more than power, it was responsibility. Whatever he did next would ripple across worlds, change fates, and perhaps even reshape the universe itself. He had been given a gift that had waited a century, and it demanded wisdom, courage, and restraint. The hum softened, almost approvingly, and the chamber seemed to settle around him. Shadows retreated, the temperature normalized, and the carvings on the walls dimmed to a gentle glow. Ethan realized he could study, learn, and prepare, but the moment of choice was approaching. Outside, the desert wind continued to howl, indifferent to the secret buried beneath its sands. But inside the cave, Ethan felt something he had not felt in years: purpose. He was no longer just a wanderer, a lonely survivor. He was the one chosen to uncover the mystery, to carry the weight of knowledge that had waited patiently for him. For the first time, he understood the cave's truth. Some secrets are not meant for the impatient, the reckless, or the weak. They are meant for those who survive the solitude, who endure the trials, and who can bear the burden of what waits. And now, after a century of silence, the cave had found its heir. Ethan tightened his grip on the object, a mix of fear and awe coursing through him. Whatever came next, he knew one thing for certain: the discovery had changed everything. The cave was no longer just a shelter, it was a doorway, and he had stepped through it. And far deeper, in shadows he could not yet see, something stirred. Something that had also waited for a century. Ethan stood in the heart of the chamber, the artifact glowing warmly in his hands. The golden light reflected in his eyes, illuminating the weariness etched into his face, the years of wandering, hunger, and solitude that had brought him here. He was no longer just a homeless man on a desert moon, he was the keeper of a secret that had waited a century for someone like him. But the weight of that knowledge pressed down harder than the desert cold ever had. He realized, in a sudden, terrifying clarity, that every choice from this moment forward carried consequences far beyond his own survival. The artifact could reshape worlds. It could topple governments, spark wars, or elevate civilizations to heights no one had ever imagined. And it could just as easily destroy everything if wielded carelessly. The hum in the cave deepened, almost a voice now, whispering through the shadows: "Decide, Seeker. Decide what will be." Ethan's thoughts raced. For years, he had dreamed of escape from the harsh void of the desert moon, of finding something that gave him purpose. And now, he had it. He could sell the knowledge, trade it for power, or use it to become someone, anything, he had never dared to imagine. The temptation was nearly overwhelming. But another thought gnawed at him: the centuries the cave had waited. Whatever had been preserved here had survived time, storms, and neglect. It had endured. And it had chosen him. Not to wield it recklessly. Not to profit from it. But to protect it, to understand it, and to decide wisely. The shadows along the walls began to shift, coalescing into shapes that reminded him of the carvings he had seen earlier, figures of beings long extinct, guardians of knowledge, watching, waiting. It felt as though the cave itself was alive, testing him, weighing his heart. He could feel their judgment in the air, heavy and deliberate. A shiver ran down his spine. The desert outside was indifferent. The cave was not. It had waited 100 years. It had survived countless storms and scavengers, hiding its secret for those who were unworthy. And now, the choice was his. Ethan lowered the artifact slightly, staring at it. He could see the power pulsing within, a tempting promise of influence and escape. But he also saw the responsibility. He saw the weight of a century of silence pressing into his hands. One misstep could unleash chaos across worlds. One wrong decision could erase civilizations or bring death to the unprepared. The hum intensified, as if urging him to decide, and the shadows leaned closer. He felt his pulse match the rhythm, steadying his thoughts. He realized that survival alone had not brought him here. Courage alone had not earned him the cave's trust. Wisdom, discipline, was what would carry him forward. With a deep breath, Ethan made his choice. He would not exploit the artifact. He would study it, understand it, and protect it until he was certain the universe could bear its truth. He would not rush into fame, fortune, or power. He would not betray the patience of the cave that had waited 100 years for him. As he carefully placed the artifact back on the pedestal, the hum shifted again, softer now, almost approvingly. The golden light dimmed slightly but continued to pulse, like a heartbeat in sync with his own. He felt a strange peace, the first in years, as though the cave had acknowledged that he had chosen wisely. Then, from the deepest shadows, a faint movement caught his eye. Something, or someone, was emerging from the far corner of the chamber, stepping silently into the glow. Ethan froze. He hadn't expected to be alone in this moment of revelation. Whoever, or whatever, was here had been waiting as well. The figure stopped, a shadowy silhouette against the golden light. Ethan's mind raced. Was it another seeker, another guardian, or something far older and stranger than he could comprehend? The hum of the cave seemed to swell, almost protective now, surrounding him like a shield. Ethan tightened his grip on the token that had brought him here, and slowly, cautiously, he stepped forward. Whatever waited in the shadows, he knew one truth: the choice he had made had not ended the test. It had only begun. The desert moon outside remained silent and cold, but inside the cave, history and destiny converged. And for the first time, Ethan felt that he was no longer a man without purpose. He was the chosen. The protector. The one who had uncovered a secret that had waited a century, and now, he had to live up to it. The shadows shifted closer, the artifact pulsed, and the hum of the cave became a voice of promise. Welcome, Guardian. The century has ended. Your time begins. Ethan took a deep breath. He was ready.